There just isn't an easy way to approach and ride the Juniper Ridge Trail. Just about every which way you approach it is going to net you a metric butt ton of climbing. And the majority of that climbing will be pushing your bike up steep grades after gaining a couple thousand feet on a Forest Service road, or worse yet, some other painfully steep trail in the remotest parts of the Gifford-Pinchot. I'm going to explain this trail system to you in two different approaches. Approach number one is to focus on how we did it with Trans-Cascadia, who shuttled us on a two-part excursion that included Juniper Ridge and Tongue Mountain, both of which can actually be part of a much more approachable ride and easier shuttle that I'll explain later. Trans-Cascadia drove us to the bottom of the 2324 road, which at the time of this filming was closed off to vehicle traffic. So we rode the entire 6 miles with 2,600 feet of climbing from the bottom of this road up to the Sunrise Trail. You could also approach Juniper Ridge from the Dark Meadow Trail or from the Boundary Trail via the Quartz Creek connector, and none of those are appealing options. There's just no easy approach to a payoff this good. Live with it. The road climb itself is gorgeous, but is otherwise nothing really to speak of. It drops you off here at the trailhead. The trailhead has parking for a few vehicles, and the Sunrise Trail is really only a couple miles with about 1,000 feet of climbing, so it wouldn't be too bad of a hike, assuming you could drive your car up to this road. Rumor has it that they're working on getting it reopened. Either way, it's super exciting to finally get to see some single track after 5 miles of road climb.
All right, whee! Oh,
Bike a bike.
Unfortunately, the Sunrise Trail is like 2 miles of hike-a-bike. Sorry about that. It sucks, and there's really no way to butter this up. It's steep, takes forever, and the trail is a foot-deep moto rut all the way up. You'll need to tip the bike up on its back wheel for a lot of this, and it's going to tire your arms out. When the Sunrise Trail arrives at this intersection with the 262A, go to the right. It's just a fork in the trail, and they both go to the same place essentially, but taking this spur gets you within easier access of Sunrise Peak, which is really the only reason you're torturing yourself at this climb in the first place. If it weren't for the awesome views of the Cascades that open up as you climb out of the woods, I would never suggest this part of the trail. When you get to this intersection with 261A, just leave your bike down here. Even if it was legal to ride your bike on this last section up to Sunrise Peak, it would be pointless because the surface is way too loose and the switchback's far too tight and steep to enjoy anything resembling a descent. Save yourself the energy of pushing your bike up this nightmare climb. Arriving at the top of Sunrise Peak is kind of a dramatic experience. This peak by itself is totally worthwhile as a standalone destination. Topping out at 5,700 feet, Sunrise Peak offers a commanding, intimidating view of the southern Washington Cascades with clear exposures to Mount Adams, Mount St. Helens, Mount Rainier, Mount Hood, and on a clear day, even Mount Jefferson. But even though Sunrise Peak is the high point, it isn't the only place to get unbelievable views along Juniper Ridge. This entire ride is full of great peaks and exposures, and that's important because of the ride option that opens up if you can't arrange a shuttle or just don't want to do the push up to this point on your bike. Now, Juniper Ridge is a ridge ride. As such, even though Sunrise Peak may be the high point, that by no means indicates that it's all downhill from here. It's pretty safe to simply assume that it's never all downhill from here. It's a ridge, so it's never all downhill from anywhere. There's always additional climbing, even within your descents. After losing somewhere around 400 feet over what feels more like a climb, yet somehow descends inexplicably, the trail arrives at the top of a section affectionately referred to by the locals as the Devil's Staircase. Descending about 700 feet over a half mile, this piece of trail is aptly named. What should be a fun, flowy descent is made much more challenging by the consistency, or lack thereof, of the surface. How dirt bikes are able to make it up and down this is a mystery to me. Seriously, this is a difficult downhill section because you can't depend on anything. The worst thing you can do is stop and slow down on this surface, but the last thing you want to be doing is bombing down this too fast because it's unpredictable. Basically, there's just no controlling anything on the Devil's Staircase. Just hold on and pray you don't break an ankle. You're really far from the car at this point. If you hurt yourself, you might be spending the night in retching pain. Once you get to the bottom of the staircase, you'll embark on another 800-foot climb that takes place over the space of 2.2 miles. There's less hike-a-bike on this section, but honestly, by now you're probably so shot to hell that it won't matter. You're going to find that the muscles you use to push the bike are just plain worn out by this point. There are at least a number of additional exposures on this section, so there's that. Isn't that nice? Don't you like exposures? I like exposures. Actually, this section of trail contains a lot more rideable passes than the climb up to Sunrise Peak did. Also, there's some genuine subalpine bench here. This area is kind of similar to the Yakult burn in that the ridge tops have not recovered their forests from a fire that happened a century ago. So you get an alpine looking ride in a subalpine environment. It's pretty neat to see all the peaks, and with the elevation being a little lower than a typical true alpine environment, the wildflowers are just obscene and out of control. Now, pay close attention to this peak that's just past this bench cut. For all landscape photography purposes, or just landscape viewing purposes, this peak is just as good as Sunrise Peak, but it has one further advantage that Sunrise Peak does not have. And that advantage is that this peak is at the top of the 1,700-foot descent of awesomeness that you actually came here to ride. The upshot of this is that if you want to experience Juniper Ridge without a shuttle, this peak, this little lava dome, is your destination. And you'd ride up to this peak and then back to the road. That's right, just do it as an out and back. This also hooks up really nicely with Tongue Mountain for future reference. After rolling off this volcanic knob, the trail splits off into braids as soon as it enters the woods. Just pick your favorite one. They all lead to the same place. This area erodes quickly though, so even the sissy lines aren't really sissy lines anymore. It's all a tragic nightmare. But fear not, this is the last of the sketchiness for the rest of this ride. This descent is nothing like the Devil's Staircase from here forward. The trail is mostly just rutted out moto trail goodness. Seriously, this is fun. The only possible detractor here is that it's sort of one large rut all the way down, but fortunately for you, you're on two wheels, and those two wheels fit perfectly into this rut. The trail holds more moisture as it descends deeper and deeper into the woods, so the tread starts to firm up and it looks less rutted and blown out. There will also be progressively fewer baby heads as you descend to the parking area. There are also fewer steep switchbacks and steep grades as you descend, but your skills at the pump track will be put to use as the grade mellows out because there are a lot of whoops in this surface caused by the motos. Not sure how those happen, but if you're willing to slow down a little bit and pump into these, it's a lot of fun. The end part of this descent felt really gentle and satisfying to me, and honestly, at this point in the ride, it's precisely what I needed because the first part of this descent is tiring. Eventually, after 1,700 feet of climbing, the trail empties out here at this parking area along the 2904 road where Juniper Ridge ends and the Tongue Mountain Trail begins. If you're just looking to get a taste of Juniper Ridge, you need to just park your vehicle here. Look for the road, it's clearly marked on trail forks, and ride up the Juniper Ridge Trail from here. Just do the section from here up to that last knob I told you about and ride it as an out and back. Now, if you have a second vehicle, what you should really do is leave one parked at the bottom of the Tongue Mountain Trail. That way you can climb up Juniper, then ride back to here and continue all the way down to the bottom of Tongue Mountain, because that is a descent you don't want to miss out on. And the next video I make is going to be about Tongue Mountain because that one's so good. It really kind of needs its own review. But this ridge, Juniper Ridge, it's one you absolutely shouldn't miss because it's gorgeous. Where else can you get such great views of a national park without having to deal with the crowds at a national park? Yeah, the views of Mount Rainier are something else. Now, get out there and go ride your bike.